What's up everybody, welcome back to another video. In this video we are going to start on the Halloween project commission art piece. If you haven't watched the video before this on how we got to where we're at right now, go back, watch it before you watch this one. It'll make a lot more sense to see how we got where we're at and the process we're going to move forward on this one. So this one's going to be a little bit more complicated than most pieces just because it's got so much going on and the colors and everything. If you watched the previous video, the colors that I chose to do that with, I totally made them up. I'm going to try to follow them as good as possible, but I'm going to make a little twist to it. I'm going to make it look more vintage than what it really is. These pictures are pretty old to begin with because they're, the movie was made in '78, so the pictures are pretty old. But I'm going to try to stick to that old vintage look on this, to kind of do something a little bit different that I've never really done before. So that's the goal on this image. And the next thing is, this is going to be pretty much probably the most complicated piece I've probably done, just because if you've noticed in the image, you probably can't tell with this black and white image, but with this colored image here I got, there's a lot of, every image besides the background is pretty much a see-through transparent image, and I did that because I like the effect with it, and I've never really pulled this off before, so it's going to be a new learning curve for me, and then as well as with all the colors that we're going to do with this. So the first goal, or the first step I'm going to start doing, I've already pretty much done it, but I'm going to pretty much just go back over this with an eraser real quick and try to just knock a lot of that, the really heavy pencil graphite marks down. And then we got the color mixed up we're going to be using, and that's going to be this really transparent orangey peach looking color that we got going on here. Let me find my eraser real quick, and then we'll start to erase this, and then we'll move on to that step. Oh, here it is. So just a regular old eraser, nothing really special. This one's been worn down because I've done this many of times. But I'm just going to go over this really lightly. And then certain areas are heavier than others, which is fine. But I just want to knock some of that really heavy graphite pencil down. That way, when we go to put paint on this, it's not going to really bleed through. You want to be really careful with this if you're doing like an automotive surface. A lot of people use chalk, because chalk you can pretty much just wipe it off when you're done with it. Makes it really simple. But as you can see, I don't know if you guys can see that in the image, but it's not as dark as it was if you guys watched the part 1 of this video on how we got to this point and how we created this image. So I've already got the color mixed up here, and I'm just going to do a really quick blast over this whole image, or this whole piece of canvas, not really going too heavy, and we're just going to kind of give it a light wash. Oh. Alright, you probably can't really tell. I can kind of see it from the camera point of view of what it looks like. It's really, really light. I can tell more in person that it's changing a lot quicker than what you guys probably can on camera there. But I've just got a really thin layer of that pinkish, orangey look to it. I can go really, really darker, and I'm going to go a little bit darker in the middle where the image is now. Because I'm going to try to keep that fade that's in this image on the outside. I'm gonna keep this fade that's going on right here on this image once we get done with this picture. So I want to keep all that nice and true. So I'm going to kind of pencil that in where I think it's going to go, and then I'm going to kind of get the middle area. Like I said, I'm going to do a little bit darker. Now, if you're blasting paint like this, we're using automotive paint, by the way. We're using Shimmerin, or not Shimmerin, the Shimmerin 2s by House of Color. So it's an automotive paint. It smells, yes, but I'm also in my shop where I've got a lot of room, so this stuff is it blows everywhere. But if you're doing this and you're blasting a big piece like this, whether it be canvas or whatever you're painting, make sure you wear a respirator. That's just, common sense, but I've done this a lot, so with me talking, you wouldn't be able to hear me if I did that, so I'm not wearing one, because I'm going to try to explain this to you guys as good as possible. So, but this stuff with solvent paints, it's not like waterborne. This stuff dries really, really quickly. It pretty much dries instantly since I'm putting on light coats after light coats, and with the air pressure, it's drying rather quickly. So I'm good to go and put another, those heavier coats on. Alright, now you can really see that halo I just put in there. It's not really perfect. I'm just marking it to where I think it's going to be, because the image is going to be faded out and towards that. So I'm going to do a quick blast in the middle here with this. Kind of give a little bit more darkness to it. I want it just a little bit darker. Alright, now can you guys see, pretty much looks a lot more covered on camera than what it really is, but it's got that really nice orangish, pinkish look to it. On camera it kind of looks more tan than it really does in person. It's more orangey, kind of like the halo on this image that I've been showing you guys. It's kind of like that, this outer color right now. That's what it kind of looks like. It's almost in between this and that really inside color, that orange right there. It's in between those two colors. Now I want to mention, I'm using these plastic little containers here with this little spout, which makes it really nice. I found these on Amazon, so if you guys are interested in getting you something like this, it makes it easy if you're making multiple colors up. So it's just, you know, you pour your paints in there and then, you know, you kind of mix it yourself inside this rather than mixing it inside the airbrush, which makes it really, really nice. On this particular image right now, since we've already went and sprayed the background and pretty much the foreground here, we're going to start doing this mapping out, is what I like to call it. We're going to do this all in like a light gray, and we're going to work our way up to like a medium gray. We're not really going dark gray on this image. We're going to keep everything really light, kind of like transparent, just like the image like you guys seen, and just stay out of that really dark blackness. We're going to kind of keep it that medium grayish. So most of this right now with the mapping out stage is going to be in the really light grays. And if you guys are interested in knowing how I mix my colors and knowing, you know, where to start and where to begin, and kind of figuring out where you want to lead your roadmap to on far as color wise, I've made a few videos along with airbrushing that explain my mixing process. So if you haven't, go back and watch those. Now, also I want to keep it really clear that I'm not going to finish this all in one sitting. There's no way. This is a really ambitious piece, so it's going to be multiple hours, a lot of hours put into this. So just be pretty clear with you that don't expect me to finish this thing in one setting, because it's not going to happen. You know, I could probably knock out something really quick with it that's halfway decent, but I always like to try to refine my pieces as much as I can. Just put as much detail in as I can. And right now I'm just cleaning out my airbrush, so we're done with the orange, the light orange, and you can always, like I said, these bottles, you can keep your solvent paints in these. I haven't yet had one that actually ate through the plastic. You gotta watch out with solvent paints on these plastic bottles. Sometimes the solvent will just eat right through the plastic, so you gotta make sure the plastic is gonna stand up to your solvent paints before you buy them. And these little bottles do the trick there. I think they're little 2-ounce bottles, and you can store your paint, like, because I know with doing big images and stuff like this, I'm always going to go back to this color at one point, so having a little bit left over is really awesome. And now I say that, I got to go get some more bottles. So I always keep a couple of them on me at all times, especially at the beginning, because when I mix my colors up, I need them. So I'll go over really quickly. With mixing my grayscales, it's just black or white and black. Pretty simple, right? It's not much. And so we're going with the lighter shade gray. So it's always going to be probably like a, if you want to use ratios, you can. I just kind of eyeball it, depending on what I like and what I don't like. So obviously this time around we're going to be using a lot more white to black. And my other videos, I've explained this process by using the drop method. You know, you count your drops, so you're going to be using more drops of white than what you are black, and that's going to create your different values of shade. So, since this is a pretty large image, you know, I kind of filled it kind of maybe a little bit less than, a little bit more than probably a quarter of white, because I don't want to mix up so much paint, even though I will be using down the line on other projects. I use grays a lot on stuff, so I'll probably be using this again, but we're just going to name this gray value shade number 1. So like I said, so it's about a quarter of the way full. And then with black is really strong, so you don't need to put a ton of black unless you really want it dark really quick. So I'm just going to drop. Just a little bit in there. I said don't take much of black. Black is super strong. And these bottles, you can just put it in here and just shake it up. So you can kind of see, obviously there's some black stuck on the side right there, but you can kind of see what kind of gray. It looks a little bit more darker in the bottle because it's in a plastic bottle, a thick plastic bottle. So when you spray this out, it's going to be really, really light and transparent. And that's what we need. And just the FYI, this, my paints in my containers that I have here, besides this black one, but I know the white because I use white all the time. This one's already reduced, so I technically don't have to reduce this. But if I was to reduce it, like I said, I kind of just eyeball it depending on how much paint I mix up. So like 1:1 is a really, really good way to start when you're airbrushing because obviously it's a smaller needle that's going through it. So when you mix it compared to a spray gun, you would mix it 1:1. So if you want to start at that, you can. And then you just want to kind of go a little bit more extra to find that really sweet spot to where you can actually either crank your air pressure really low to get those really fine details and have it come out really nice on you, or you can crank the air pressure up and have it come out. So you got to kind of find those sweet spots in air pressure that works for you compared to what you're reducing it at. Because when you're really cranking the air pressure down and you're doing the really, really fine detailed spots, you're obviously wanting to over reduce it by much, much more than what you're really thinking. And it all depends on what airbrush you're using too. These are microns, so the needle sizes are really, really tiny on them, so you have to over reduce them more than what you would think in your head. So with that being said, I'm just going to add a little bit of reducer. So I always put a little bit of reducer in the neck here, and then that way when I go and add my drops, or if I'm mixing it right out, I can just add just what I need. And then, I don't know if you guys can see that on camera, but it's all mixed in there. And I always put the reducer in first. That's just a tech tip because you don't want your paint to, if you put your paint in first unreduced, all that thick paint's gonna sit at the bottom of the neck where the needle goes in and out of the airbrush, and you're gonna have a really hard time with that paint coming out at first because it's gonna be all glumpy and really thick sitting at the bottom there. So a really good tech tip is just put reducer in there first, so that way when you put your solvent in, obviously you're gonna sink to the bottom, but you got some reducer in there to help mix that up. And then when you shake up your airbrush, you can pretty much be ready to go at any point. So alright, so it's pretty groovy the way I like it. So I'm gonna probably put you guys on a time lapse and I'm gonna explain to you what I'm gonna do here really, really quickly. So you always wanna have your reference as close as you possibly can to be always looking and looking back, looking on your the art piece, looking back to the picture. You almost want to have it in a sight to where you don't have to move your eyes or your head. You can just look over with your eyes real quick and keep going. So you want to have it that close because any type of detail or anything as far as proportion goes, anything that you do kind of miss, this will help you out in that case because it's going to be so close, you're going to be so focused on it that it's going to be just right there in your way, and you're just going to pretty much put it where it needs to go. And so what I'm going to do here is, like I said, it's called mapping out. I'm not doing any detail work. I'm simply just shading everything in to where it's one whole like silhouette, if you will. Like I said, there's no detail work in this, so I'm just going to be working in the areas that I see that are lighter, and then the darker areas we're still going to cover it, but once we move up in gray shades and value, I'll end up doing those darker areas and leaving the lighter areas alone. So it's pretty much just like, you know, a coloring book. You're coloring in everything with one whole shade of color, and then you can go back through and add, you know, your other colors on top of that. So it's kind of like the same idea, just with an airbrush. So this process goes pretty quick, so I'm going to put you guys on time lapse. So I'm going to stop a little bit and explain here. So the color we got mixed up in here, on camera it probably appears to be really dark compared to what's actually what it looks like here. That's just because we got this orangish, peachish background here that kind of separates that, and that gray, that light gray really makes a difference. So it's coming out looking really dark gray, but it's really not. It's pretty light, and you won't start seeing that until we start moving up into the value shades of a darker gray. So just want to make that clear first and foremost. And when I'm doing this, I'm not going in and just blasting. This is something I wanted to explain before I go any further. That way you kind of got room for error, if that makes sense. And I do it because it's easier to build up layers and take away layers. Like if I do mess up, it's a lot easier to go back through and fix something if I have it really light compared to when it's like really dark. And that's going to be the difference in an artist, honestly. Some guys can go in there and just put it where it needs to be. Some people can't. It's just the way it is. It's how people are. It's how you were taught. You know, it just depends on what you're comfortable with doing. And there's no right or wrong way. I want to get that out of the way real quick. Because there might be different opinions and, you know, different people, things like that. It does not matter as long as the end result is the same. You know, it doesn't matter. And that goes with everything. It's not just with this. But I wanted to show you guys this. And the reason why I go really light is not only that, is because I can take an eraser and I can go back through. It's a lot easier to take away paint. Even though we're using solvent paint, you can do this with waterborne too. You can take an eraser. I've got an electric eraser too as well that I use sometimes here. This little guy, this is an electric eraser. And I can take this thing, I'm going to do this by hand because I don't really need to go really heavy with it. But I can go through here like where I've made it pretty dark. And you can take away how dark it is, or you can go through and you can start chiseling out in certain areas. You know, if you want something to be a little bit lighter, you can do that. But yeah, it's a lot easier to do this with when it's a really light paint that's been applied. It's really hard to do it when it's not. When it's really heavy, it's really hard. It doesn't do the job as the same as when you do it really light. Especially like in here, I can go through here and really pop this out. Where the wrinkles are in her t-shirt, I can just go through there and I can constantly just do this back and forth thing. I don't want to take away too much because we are, like I said, it's a really light what we're doing right now. But you can just go through there and you can just start, you know, working the tiny details in there. Or maybe if you messed up, like I said, you can always go back through and just kind of erase it. But since we got the peach on the background here, I don't want to go too hard because it will end up taking the peach back out, which is not a big, you know, it's not a big deal. I can sit here and I could go through there and put my different shades of gray and where I need to put them, where they're darker and lighter or whatever. And I can honestly go back on an eraser instead of using white, since it's a white background initially. I can sit here and just erase all this peach off to give, like in her shirt where it's actually white in the picture in real life. I can go back through and just do that, chisel away little by little and bring those details out rather than just stick white in there and go back in with the white. So that's another way too. So just want to show you guys that real quick. I'm going to jump back into mapping this thing out.